look at all of this data. Hey there, so I've made it back home after the Regional Qualifier Barcelona. It was an experience, to say the least. I'm going to save my thoughts about the event for another video, but in this one we'll talk about my tournament run itself, the decks that I played against. We'll look through the data matrix to see how things shaked up and if there's any insights we can gain from it, and the conversion rates between day 1 and day 2. Then we'll look at the deck list from the top players. Who expected Ornn to win? That was like, Ornn in top 8 was not on my bingo card. So huge congratulations to Miss Elian for an excellent showing. I think his name is Mateo, the victor, for being the first Ornn to win an RQ. The deck that was competing with Renata Glask and Rumble for the worst Spirit Forge deck back in set 2. So let's go ahead and get you some information. So I finished 160th, 9-4 record of 2,224 players, I believe. The event was not my day. I started out losing, and what happens when you start with a loss is you are paired into a player that is also 1-1, and then you'll pair into a player that's 2-1, and then 3-1 instead of XO. So every opponent automatically has an additional loss. So your tiebreakers get worse, and if you're playing into people that are losing early and they continue to lose, even more unfortunate, and like you have less opponents that make day 2. So your tiebreakers, if you have a day 1 loss, just get totally cooked. So I lost. I paired into a Master Yi and got high rolled, and then I won the mirror, beat Kha'Zix, beat a Master Yi 2-1. I beat Draven pretty convincingly, 3 games, but it was a pretty convincing showing. I think I dumpstered him, he dumpstered me, and then I dumpstered him. It was kind of how that match seemed to have gone. I lost again to a Master Yi. Felt incredibly frustrated by the matchup. And then I paired into Jace for the first time with very little experience in the matchup. I don't think we Kennens need prefects in that matchup. It's not really that important. I think you should use your sideboard slots for other things because the matchup's kind of free with just salvages and starcrosses, depending on the volume of them that you have in your deck. I think like getting to 3 starcross and 2 salvage will improve other matchups as well. So I think it makes more sense to have that combination of things for the Jace Aurora matchup because it does pretty well. So 6-2 means that I made it to day 2, and I could not participate in the rebound. That was already sold out anyway, but I moved to day 2. I pair into a Jace again. Love to see it. Got the win. Very kind. I think he was a Frenchman. I played against like people from all over the world at this event, which was very, very interesting. I think I played against one American, 2. Very, very small amount. I paired against a lot of Frenchmen. There's a lot of Germans there, a lot of Spanish, unsurprisingly. But the Jace matchup is very easy for Kennen. It is incredibly favored. So not knowing what to do, I just had been I practiced into Aurora since set 1, but the Kennen matchup, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but it was pretty easy to infer like how valuable Starcross was and Salvage was in the matchup. I had a cheeky main board Salvage, which came up, which was kind of nice. My opponent didn't sideboard check or request a judge sideboard check me. If your opponent pulls out a main board Salvage, you might want to do that. I'm not a cheater. I genuinely had a main board Salvage because I have a hard time with the Azir matchup. Speaking of Azir, Pedro, you need your beard. The beard needs to come back. Like that's like you bricked so hard in top 4 because you didn't have a beard. Very obvious. I look forward to shaking your hand at the next event that I see you, Beard Brothers. So day 2, I beat Jace pretty convincingly. It's a trivial matchup. I paired into an Aurelia, and this poor gent, I high rolled the hell out of him. I don't think I've had better draws in my life. On game 2, I conquered on his turn twice. No 2-drop into first turn Nocturne. Nocturne ended up scoring like 8 points, or like 6 or 7 points after doing a Treasure Hunter Ride the Wind move. And game 1, I had 6 gold and like 2 gear or 2 seals. So I was like in resource heaven. And then I was drawing, like I drew so well in that matchup. And following that, I paired into Crows. Crows is a very excellent Irelia player who I think had a top 3 finish in Spirit Forged on Irelia, if I'm remembering correctly. Crows is an excellent player, and I low rolled my draws in that match. So very unfortunate for me. And then I lost to another Master Yi. Rengar Punch first, double Alpha Strike. I don't people say that it is favored for Kennen, but maybe I am just underprepared. I spent days practicing into Factor and his friends. I don't know. I don't have a Rebuke in my deck, which might be a problem, and I don't have Flash, and I kind of want to put both of those in the deck before Singapore. If I bring Kennen today, I'm going to play a bit of Kaisa. Today's the first day after getting back. I'm going to play Kaisa. I'm going to play Kennen. Make a decision today. Roll with it for the week. I have 2 skirmishes to attend this weekend, and then we'll go hard. I then paired into Peter. Peter is the only Renekton day 2. He's Flesh and Blood Pro. Really cool to chat with. Renekton has hands. It is worse Rengar. It's more or less the same deck. When he goes first on Starspring, if he lands Bunny, good luck. But then after that, yeah, whatever. So let's move from my abridged run into some data. So this is the matrix that covers the win-loss percentages in each of the matchups on Riftex. And I noticed something when perusing this. I have not looked at the data itself, like not very much at all. I just pulled it up because I wanted to like talk about it in the video, but this has something in the upper corner that you may have seen and not known what it was, so I wanted to discuss it. So this is a confidence interval. It's calculated with the win rate of this win rate metric and the volume of matches. There's in probability, like statistic stuff, there's 2 different ways to calculate this depending on what you're doing. I think it's Wald and Wilson are the 2 different methods, if I'm remembering my classes correctly. I think this is a 95% confidence interval. Use those methods to calculate the standard error, and then you can use the standard error multiplied by 1.96, get the 95% confidence interval, which just means that the more matches you have, the more confident you are that this number is the true win rate, and the more confident, like if there was 20 events that were played, we're 95% confident that the true win rate of the deck will fall within this range. So you'll notice that for decks that have a lot less matches, right? So like the less played ones, the win rate confidence interval, like for this Annie down here, 29% to 68%, because the volume of matches is so low, which means that the true win rate of the deck is somewhere within this statistically. We don't know because we'll never have enough matches in this format to know. Now, when we're looking at the data from an RQ or an event, we have to be intentional. We want to consider things in context, and we want to avoid single variable analysis. We want to be multivariate in how we approach all of this. So when we look at Kennen data, we want to add as much context as possible. So for Kennen, brand new deck, multiple variants. In Top Cut, there was multiple variants. I haven't looked at the deck lists. We're going to explore those together. I did look at the Ornn list and the Azir list because I was curious, but while I was at the event. But Kennen is unsolved and is very new. And there is Baron lists, non-Baron lists, Ruination lists. There is Tentacle between 1 and 3. Some people don't play Nocturne. I've tested all for the most part. And because of the large variance in deck building, like it's even more interesting that we have 58% win rate here, right? Like that's really curious to me. Also, it's a perceived best deck of the format. So, like, if I'm a really good player and my main objective is to win the event, more people will gravitate towards this deck that are competitive players. So if you are a best of metal pursuer and you're like, Lily is my favorite deck, I don't care about winning the event, I just want to go for the metal, do the best that I can, the better I can place, whatever. Same thing with like Rumble, right? Rumble is a underperforming deck, and competitive high-level pros are not likely to pick this deck because of its struggles in the format. So the people that will play this are those that are seeking the metal prize, which is worth a great sum of money, which is why that there is a significant scope. Like there's a large volume of different players playing different decks, right? The meta is very flat because of the best of prizing system. There's a huge incentive to play like Jhin, regardless of how poorly you expect him to do, because the prizing is so great, right? And that influences the type of players that are attracted to each of these decks. Master Yi, the only reason to play this deck is I think it's going to win that tournament, or I want my top 64 finish, which is interesting. One reason I'm using this particular website instead of some of the others is because I can organize it by win rate, right? There are some, like, this has similar features, but it won't let me like order them, you know, which is, yeah. So win rate plus matches plus any context that you can have, right? Add to your collective understanding as many variables as you can, stack them to get a feel of why a deck is performing the way that it is. So we talked about Kennen. Kennen is very strong. Kennen has a 58% win rate. Well, at this event had a 58% win rate. We don't know if it's the true win rate or not. We can know with confidence that the true win rate of the deck is between 56 and 61%, which is very high. Very high. I wanted to share... We'll talk about conversion rates in a sec. Because that's another component that is informative of our analysis. And then whatever conclusions we can draw from that. Lux, overrepresented, I hate this deck, should be banned. But 57% win rate is very high. I made the meta call that there wasn't going to be very many Luxes. And if we look at number of matches, we can see that Lux was a very unpopular deck, right? We can actually look... Before we go too much further, we'll go to the meta breakdown so we can look at the percentages. Because I said that there was going to be 10 to 15% Kennen, which there was. Kennen, Master Yi, and Irelia were going to be comprised of the largest meta share of the event. Was kind of expected, and that's what happened. I think there's slightly more Master Yi than I predicted, which is unfortunate for me because I paired into 4 of them, and I am not good enough in that matchup yet for the level of play that I want to be at. Aurelia also very strong, so I'm unsurprised that there's this grouping of popularity, and then it skips down to Rek'Sai and then peters out, right? So it's like 12, 9, 7, 5, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, and then the 1%ers, right? This tells you only so much. It tells us that like a certain volume of players think this deck is the best, or like these types of players are trying to spike the event. There's a grouping of Rek'Sais that have been playing Rek'Sai for a while and are now sad that so many people have adopted their deck because they think that the deck is very strong. And I think it is. It's probably an A tier deck. I think these comprise the S tier, and then the A tier is a conglomeration of other decks down here. I don't know how I feel about Ornn anymore, so we'll have to explore the data on Ornn because Ornn won the event. But more importantly, we'll go from all to top 64 conversion. Top 64 conversion is huge because of the percent of the event that's there. It's sub 0.5%, right? It's you can do that math pretty easily, right? So 2224, no, sorry, 64 divided by 2224 gives us the percentile. Is that 2.8%? Yes. So sub 3% of players. So the top 2.8% of players, this is the decks that they comprise of, right? 34% for Kennen. There is a good volume of Kennen players that converted Aurelia Master Yi. So the percent of the top 64, I'm under the impression that this is percentage of share. It might be worth doing the math to determine the conversion rate as it relates to like this percentage of Kennens converted. I think that's more informative. This appears to be percentage meta share, and I think I might have that here. D2 conversions. Kennen 29.9%. Yeah, okay. So we'll shift into conversion rates just for a moment. Kennen converted at just under 30%, which is really high. This is informative to me of like the floor of the deck. Generally, I think Kennen's too complex to have too low of a skill floor, but the conversion rate is pretty impressive, right? And I think that's also an element of good players are playing Kennen because of the skill expression that the deck has, and because of the large, like this, the stack deck and lightning rush combo gives you high searchability in the deck. You have a large volume of micro decisions, and you're not concerned about going to time like some of the other decks that were called Miracle back in set 2. Interestingly, Azir also had a really high conversion at 27%. I think there's just a good amount of like Azir purists that were playing the deck. I wanted to also talk about or share with you these stats from Vegas. The problem deck was at 37% day 2 conversion on this event. Interesting enough, Rek'Sai had a 27% conversion. Nobody was really complaining about Rek'Sai being OP back in set 2. I don't think anyone really was. I didn't mind playing this matchup for the most part. This was the problem. The stats are similar, but not nearly as bad, right? 30% conversion is really high, but we have to keep in mind good players are playing the deck, right? So context is everything. Master Yi converted pretty well. Irelia pretty well. Rengar pretty well. Like if it's 20+%, I'd say that like all of these conversions are reasonable. Nothing too much to say. Nasus had a very poor win rate, right? So we'll go back to, we'll look at that in just a moment. Man, my brain just going everywhere, right? Because I want to explore everything all at the same time. Nasus had a 47% win rate and had some element of conversion into the top 64. I think far more Nasus showed up at this event than expected. I'm still kind of thinking this is a Metal Tier deck. I don't know why so many people brought it. Maybe this was just the Aurora players wanting to play really big unit deck, and it's finally a non-Aurora version, like the first really large unit deck that wasn't tied to the Aurora package. So I think that's probably why Nasus was overpopulated for the strength of the deck. I've lost to Nasus, by the way. The deck has hands, right? I think I probably, like, let's look at the numbers. I'm assuming it has a decent Kennen matchup. Low volume of matches, hard to tell, but if you can get Heron on field and you have the right number of counter spells in your deck, you'll probably do fine. I'm curious what the best of Nasus had. So one thing to do after these events is when they post the best of deck listing, and we have some of them, but when you look at the best of decks, one of the best things you can do is memorize the deck lists from the best of players. The large majority of players that attend our queues are net decking. They'll just take the exact deck list that a player did or a player performed on in a previous event, bring it to the next event. And they might change a certain percentage of the cards, but for the most part, it'll be the exact same deck. So if you do this, you can have a better idea of what your opponents are going to be playing, and it'll be easier to play around. That's one thing I did back in Atlanta is I memorized the previous best ofs. Lux had a 57% win rate at the event. There was not a large volume of Luxes there, which is why the confidence interval is so high. Lux is a deck that should not exist. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's lovely to see. So Kennen has a really good win rate in this matchup because of Ride the Wind, and you can double conquer turn 2. You get Nocturne out, and then you just ganks back and forth between battlefields. So it's relatively easy, and you can run DJ. Divine Judgment is a silver bullet for the matchup. So if you have it in the deck and you see it before turn 5 or 6, you just automatically win. Like you literally just automatically win, because if they only have 2 runes, they can't do anything. You can't get to infinite if you have no resources to do so. Master Yi, I'm not surprised could struggle with the matchup, but yeah, I'm not wanting to see any Luxes at my events personally. Rengar, I am very surprised did so well. Rengar is a very good deck, potentially an S tier deck, honestly. After seeing so much gameplay of Rengar, I'm starting to be more and more convinced that it's an S tier deck. I think Prismat probably considers it a high A tier deck, but it has a significant volume of skill expression. It's also very difficult to play for the most part. Like the Star Spring game, if you land Bunny and go first, it's kind of trivial, but I'm excited that Prismat won. Yeah, Prismat won best of because he was top 8. I was expecting a lot of people not to show up with Rengar because they don't want to compete with him for the best of, because like it's a deck that can top 64 for sure. How many top 64 converted over 5 decks? That's pretty decent. It's interesting that only 8 Master Yi players made it to top 64. And I suspect that of the, 200-ish, 199 players that brought Master Yi, the majority of them were seeking an invite that they did not receive. Was it probable? No, apparently you want to be on Kennen if you want your invite. Granted, you're not getting the best of it unless you top 8 anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Let's get back to the win rate matrix. Sort by win rate. Master Yi performed very well. It is unclear to me if Kennen or Yi has a winning matchup. It is 52% in favor of Yi. In some other events, I believe it was in favor of Kennen. Some players are stating that Kennen is favored, but I think for the most part, it's people that have a really good understanding of the matchup and have the right cards in the deck. Some of the cards that people are like, yeah, you should just be running this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm running 3 of those and still struggling. It's like, well, genuinely, some of my matchups I just got high rolled. Like, variance matters, right? So the reason why a deck finishes in the top 8 is not because those are the best decks. It's because those players are playing really good decks that have really high player skill and are succeeding on variance. Variance matters in a card game because luck of the draw is a relevant component of the game, and your skill in deck building changes how variance occurs to some degree, but you can still brick. Squirtle bricked in top 4 pretty badly, like really badly. I think one of the games he didn't see a Azir who didn't see a gear equipment for like 2 or 3 turns, like passing on turn 1. Did he play Azir on curve? Like it was pretty unfortunate. So some people say like certain decks shouldn't have things banned. Like you shouldn't ban Aurora because it's never won on RQ. That has nothing to do with the strength of the deck. It's just a component of, like, strength of the deck is only one component of what makes top 8. So I think that is a very foolish statement to make, that a deck that hasn't won in RQ shouldn't take a hit because it's unhealthy for the game. Lux is very unhealthy for the game. It is not playing Riftbound. It should be banned. Doesn't matter that it hasn't won. It's won third-party events, sure, but it not winning in RQ is not a reason why it should not be banned. It's unhealthy for the game at a local level, and at the RQ level. Like one of the least. I'll stop complaining someday. I promise. Maybe someday. Victor showed up in a very small quantity, so the range of its win rate is pretty low. Or it's pretty wide, rather. Appears to not have a good Kennen matchup. The matchup quantity is so low, it's very difficult to know. I think that Victor is still not in my high placing element. I don't even know if I would consider Victor as a top 64 contender deck. Did anybody convert on Victor? I don't think so. I hate that these guys did. No, I think Victor should be non-played at these events because it lacks the strength needed to compete at an RQ, and you lack best of opportunity. Going back to win rate matrix. Is there any other insights that are drawn from this? Decks that have a good Kennen Master Yi Irelia matchup will have a better time at these events. Let's go back to number of matches. Actually, that doesn't matter. Let's look at Kennen specifically. So Rengar appears to have a really good matchup in a Kennen, so they'll have a good time, potentially. They had a good matchup into Kennen, Yi, and Irelia. It looks to have had a really good time, at least win rate wise. It had an excellent time into the most popular decks. That is informative to me as a deck that I would consider bringing, because you have a higher statistical probability of success if you're good into the decks that are the most popular. It appeared to have struggled into Diana and Kha'Zix. I don't have enough information on the matchup because I've never played it to know the context behind why these numbers exist. Maybe they make sense, maybe they don't. But this is really good, right? Kennen, it's mirror matchup city. I only saw one. I was so prepared for the mirror. And then Master Yi had a slight unfavored matchup and a slight favored matchup into Irelia, which is, I think Irelia is very flippant, and I think both of these matchups are, does your opponent draw very well? That's a bit too over trivial or too oversimplified for the complexity of the matchups, but it just doesn't feel like the agency is on the Kennen player to play correctly in this matchup as much as it is who happens to draw the right sequence of cards in the right order. I should be unconvinced over some time. Maybe I just need some more practice in the matchup. We'll see. So I'm looking at these very popular decks and like, where's all of the green and the red? So far, Rengar did very well. Diana has a horrid Kennen matchup, it seems. Assuming that these are correct. Like, obviously, these are the numbers that were observed, but we don't know if they're the actual burn rate of the decks. And this is like something that you can do if you're interested in seeing like what things do well in and what struggles against. You just have to be aware that there are variants and matches might be too small to be informative. I think that is the most I'd like to see. There was like 18 cases that showed up and 2 made day 2. Good job for the both of you. I'm very skeptical on a lot of the data because we have Diana losses, which Diana is highly favored. Draven losses. Draven is also very favored. Irelia and Yi are both difficult matchups, but I think Irelia got a lot easier if the deck is built properly. So we'll be doing some Kaisa content later. But for now, let's look at some of the top deck lists from the event. Some of these are possibly incorrect. We don't actually know. I know for even like the official Riot post, like sometimes those are not correct. They might have gotten better with how deck list submissions work, but for the Houston event, I know specifically the top 8 list prepared by George G was incorrect because I chatted with him about it. I was like, why did you make these decisions? And he was like, yeah, that's not in my deck. I don't know what they're doing. So let's start with Ornn. Fire Below the Mountain. This is a very unique deck, and that is super incorrect for sure. I think that I'm curious what the seal prices have gone to since. So the Ornn's Forge makes sense. Seat of Power, Veiled Temple. These are, of course, like very obvious. And I would only assume that Seat of Power makes sense if he needs more card draw, or if you just want to not let your opponent like Seat of Power is often played going second, so your opponent wants to go to their own battlefield, and then they have, like, before they can get any value out of theirs, they already have to be on theirs. If you can kill them and then make them have to fight you over Seat of Power, that can be kind of interesting. I don't know. There's not that much to say about it, to be honest. But how many... Let's zoom out just a little bit so we can see more of the deck at the same time. Let's focus on the main deck. Helm of Suppression is one of the most interesting meta calls to make. Interesting in that it's really, really good. It's absolutely exceptional against Kennen because it makes every cantrip cost 2. I think it bodies Kennen. I would run more of these if you can, but it is exceptional in the Kennen matchup, and then probably kind of mid into some of the other matchups that are less dependent on energy for spells like Rengar. Most of his combat tricks are units. So I hated this card. When I saw it printed, I was like, both of the decks that I play are very spell heavy. So I'm really not a fan of seeing this card. And I don't want its popularity to grow, but it's so good in the Kennen matchup that if you're playing green, you kind of you want this. Granted, if I see green, I'm like, man, salvage looking pretty good for this matchup. It's very expensive to spend 8 and 2 to empower this thing. So you probably very infrequently can empower it unless you literally have nothing to do with your energy. You're on 3, 6, 9. 9 turn 1 plays going first, not counting gear. So you 3, 6, 9. And then we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21-ish. I don't know if you'd ever actually play Sprite Fountain turn 1 going first, but you can if it's the only thing you have to do. Actually, you can because Ornn discounts it and makes it so you can score on your first turn. That's kind of cracked. This is exceptionally aggressive, and the entire deck is very low to the ground. So when you're playing this style of deck where everything is very low costed, your concern is that you run out of cards because you can play everything on one turn or play everything on just a few turns. So you need things that draw as much as they can. So Scuttle Crab, cantrips. It's unfortunate that he doesn't have any might, and you're not playing Master Yi, so it doesn't go to 2 on defense. But the hand information is quite valuable, and you can equip Brutalizer to it and make it a 3. You know, Mask of Foresight is also a card that helps it, right? So Scuttle Crab becomes better in the deck because it has tools that help it, and it becomes a 2 with Cloth Armor. And you can use Ornn Forge to equip it, or to play cloth armor for free. Yeah, you can play cloth armor for free and then use Fire Below the Mountain to equip it. Actually, it is quick draw, so just attach it on for free. That is so interesting. That's a really good tech piece. Clockwork Keeper's here because it draws. So we have both of these draw. Patch Pourbot also draws if you have 3 or more other gear. And because you can play Seal for free, you play Seal, you play Seal, you play something else, then play Patch Pourbot, and you draw. Like, use the Legend ability, pay for Seal, use the Seal, pay for Seal, or play a Cloth Armor, and play a Pourbot, draw a card. So you have all of these doing significant draw. If you watch the finals, Pit Crew had insane work. Porosnax also draw. Idichi hits hard. One of Lecturing Yordle, probably also just for card draw, and people often forget it as tank. The amount of people that walked into my battlefields when I was on Lecturing Yordle and Kaisa, pass, kill this, I'm like, that is tank. And they're like, oh no. Same kind of thing, like people forget that Nocturne is ganking. Aspiring Engineer is interesting because it also gives you card draw. Not in the way that we think of, like collecting a card from the top of the deck, but when you play Aspiring Engineer, you can grab a card from trash, which gives you pseudo card draw. Porosnax, like, so this deck has a significant engine where it plays a lot of these very inexpensive cards, but it gets to draw off of playing a lot of the cards that are in this deck. So with sufficient experience, this doesn't look like it's that hard to pick up. It does take some piloting skill for sure, and I'm not sure what the bad matchups are outside of, like, I can play a bunch of gear hate. Well, maybe Thermo Meme still struggles because of the amount of gear that exists and must exist. Like, if I Thermal Beam and you have a Sprite Fountain, a couple Sterix Gauge, and Seals out, and I kill all of that, you're not having a good time. At least I can't imagine you will. So Thermal Beam probably goes hard against this deck, especially since there's no win wall. It has some pretty straightforward sideboard tech that just kind of makes sense. GA is the most peculiar to me. Maybe it's just to keep the Pit Crew alive. Like that's what I'd assume it would be. I watched the finals on a plane, so I really don't remember much. It's awesome to be able to play both the green and blue decrees. The decrees are kind of like okay, but these ones are super relevant in this deck. I think it makes a ton of sense. Very, very well built, well constructed deck, and an excellent pilot. Well done, TheManLand. Let's go to the best of Kennen in Koko Lopez. Koko Lopez, as I'm aware, is on the Baron package. Yep, so we are playing the Baron. So this is a Kennen deck that expands its required core at the cost of higher variance. Increases its variance at the cost of having less room in the deck, right? So let's start with the top end. Standard battlefields for the most part. There's different opinions about whether Veil Temple or Sandswept Tome makes the most sense. I prefer Sandswept Tome, especially when you're on double switcheroo and triple Ride the Wind, and the more Starcross you have, like the more opportunities you have to take advantage of targeting your own cards with power costed spells, the better. So Sandswept Tome is super good. I think generally you want to play Zone Warren's game 1, Sandswept Tome on the play, and Minefield on the draw. One reason you play Minefield going second is to have an attempt at high rolling your opponent. This can destroy your game if you mull the wrong cards, but you also high roll your opponent going second and steal a game that you might not win to begin with. In addition to that, you're playing Baron Nashor, which Baron Nashor and the Harrowing exist to largely go from 5 to 8. It also improves matchups like Ezreal. Like very, very difficult matchups that can improve. Big problem, they can brick your hand, which is why there's a lot of players that aren't on it. I don't play Baron. I don't like it because you can brick really hard. And there's some matchups it's kind of unplayable, or rather that you can't play it unless you're going from 5 to 8. So it's like having Time Warp in the deck, and then your one component has to be in trash, one component must be in your hand at the right timing for you to go from 5 to 8 on a lethal play. Or rather 5 or 6 or 7 to 8. I'm not hugely fan. It also does increase the value of your up from the deeps. So you're going second is probably even stronger with it. But 2-drop complement is, I like Treasure Hunter. I love Traveling Merchant. I think they're the most premium for the deck. And then Shadow Order Disciple is kind of a fourth traveling merchant that also can get pretty big. So if you move in, conquer, ride the wind home, and then go, you can burn 3 times and make him a bit bigger. So the extra might is useful in some matchups. And then Tide Turn is used to get the Baron around. I generally think that you should just be on 2 of one of these for a higher consistency, but they definitely serve different purposes. There's some interesting lines you can take with Tide Turner. Like if Tide Turner is in trash and you have last rights, you can play 2-drop, a couple last rights, ride the wind, play Tide Turner, swap, and then push. So there's like some really interesting lethal lines that exist. It's like everyone hates seeing Nocturne when you draw it, unless you also have Ride the Wind and the battlefields are clear, or you can get over battlefields with 6. Because if you Nocturne, Ride the Wind, gank, like you just have extra lethal lines when Tide Turner exists. So I'm a big fan of seeing him in the deck if you're on more than 6 2-drops. Fizz, most people are on 2 of these. You can play 2 or 3, depending on your build. If you have Baron in the deck, you don't have space for a 3rd, because the required cards for this matchup, 3-stack deck, 3 Lightning Rush, 3 Nocturne, 3 Rasa. I've experimented with 0, 1, 2, and 3 Nocturne. I think 3 is correct. 3 seals must be played. So you have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 cards that must be played. And then they're playing a certain volume of 2-drops, which means you have very little space for the rest of the deck. And part of it is dedicated to Harrowing Baron. You really don't have much interaction. You're just playing big units, or free units, rather. I need to put Flash back in my deck. I missed Flash. I took it out and didn't think I needed it. And then I think this helps the Master Yi matchup quite a bit, because if they commit to using Punch First or Alpha Strike or like certain things to clear, Flash does seem pretty good. I'm a fan of that. Gusts are in the sideboard. Gusts are so good going second, and they're so good in certain matchups, and then they're just useless in other matchups. I had 2 in the main because I wanted to be heavily teched for the mirror, and it destroys the mirror. But past that, it is it's very low to the ground. It's very good. It's good into Yi too, because you make their 2-drops that become 4s not. It's good. It's good into the right matchups, but then in the early game, and then there's just some stages you just don't want to see it. Abandon is second hard bargain. That is different. It's useless into Irelia. It's useless into certain matchups, but it is heavily important into big costed spells, which means it's interesting in the mirror if your opponent is playing the Harrowing. They play Harrowing, Abandon. They just skip their turn, depending on their style. One problem with this is that this is playing low eco largely. So you're usually tapping out to play Harrowing. And if you do so and it gets abandoned or hard bargained, probably just lost the game because of it. Decrees are largely for the mirror. Also, could bring it in against Azrael or Vex decks. But this is like the only playable decree for the deck. The purple one is, I don't know what they're doing. Because it doesn't hit tokens. Why does the purple one not hit tokens? All of like, it's probably the worst of the 6 decrees, to be honest. I think that 2 salvage is a mandatory option for this deck. I'm surprised he got away with 1, but you don't have very much space in a Baron list to be able to take stuff out to put 2 salvage in against Azir. Azir and Aurora largely is why I want these. I'd rather have a second salvage for sure than 2 of these Ravenloom prefects. Invert Timelines is largely there for the Ezreal matchup, and it can be played in the Stellacorn decks to make your opponent mill. There was one time I played, I want to say I was playing against Bradykin, and I Invert Timelines when he had a big hand. He wasn't excited about that. When his hand got built up again, I Fizz Invert Timelines. And then towards the end of the game, I second cycled, got back and replayed Invert Timelines. Nice. Second Starcrossed. I kind of like 3 Starcrossed, but again, you're making some sacrifices playing Baron Heroine in the deck. That's probably as much we can say about that for now. Let's look at the Squirtle deck. If I remember correctly, he's got a Kennen. He's got a Handhammer, and then the rest is from last set. Getting double decrees, there was 3 Decree of Unities in his deck. I did not know that. 2 Degree of Focus, a Vi. Vi is funny. I love Vi. 1 Barbara, 2 salvage. Interesting. I'm not confident why these were the chosen ratios. I'm not much of an Azir player. A couple of interesting things to note. Triple back off, triple hidden blade, triple guards, and a Kennen. You will never know what card this man hid because he has so many things to hide. I think one hand hammer in 3 Eye of Herald makes a ton of sense. Having this complement of like tournament plays going first. Brutalizer is technically a tournament play going first. You just don't get the unit from it, right? But these make a ton of sense so you can play the game. And then the 2 drops or the extra plays going second, which kind of feels weird for them costing 2 energy, but can also be played going first if you have nothing else. 3 BF Sword they're just too strong not to play. Defy is Defy. 2 on guard, 3 discipline. Probably makes sense as ratios. I'm curious if he felt that this was correct in his after his event run. I think it like the extra card draw is highly relevant, but the less energy is also relevant. So like imagine certain matchups make you want to play one or the other potentially, or certain games like going first versus going second. I love Death Grip. I think it is a very excellent combat trick. It absolutely destroys your opponent's combat math. And 3 of Arise is pretty obvious. It is a must of 3. And Hall of Legends is the best battlefield for the deck. Treffer War Camp makes sense for Eye of the Herald. And Seed of Power is Seed of Power. Pedro, please bring me back your beard. I will complain about it for a while. Gonkra, being the next Kennen to discuss, is not on a Baron package. We don't have a sideboard for this deck in this posting. So HXN Gonkra, congratulations on your top 4 placement. Very exciting, very cool, very cool. So what's different about this list? These are the same, but we have no Shadow Order Disciple. We're on 7, 2 drops, which is relatively high. I think most people at the start were playing many, and then it kind of shifted to these decks that were running like 4 or 5, and then it's growing back out to like 7 to 8. And as the deck becomes more and more solved, we'll figure out which is actually correct. Running double Fizz, 2 to 3 Fizz makes sense. Nocturne, Rasa. I hate this card. I don't understand Tail Cloaked Matriarch, especially without running the Tornado Warrior. So if you are Gonkra or you know Gonkra, I'm curious why they decided to include this piece when you have so little cards in the deck. When you empower this, you can play Fizz from Grave or Kennen from Grave. Sure. I think for 2 and a power, so it's cheap Fizz. So maybe this is just their 3rd copy of Fizz. I find this card super underwhelming, so I don't understand why so many people are including it. 3 of Rasa seals mandatory. 1 of Last Rites, which means I assume that there's one on the board, but they're running Last Rites Shadows. They're playing Minefield, which means it's most likely that they have a shovel on the board to bring in case they accidentally mull the shovel. If you're in a matchup where the shovel matters and you play Kennen and mull the shovel, you could lose the game on the spot. That's why I'm like, if you're like, you have to be very, very intentional if you're running just one of these. Granted, if Last Rites is important, Shadow of the Past becomes more interesting. You can also grab Matriarch. No, I think in this build you're just grabbing Rasa. If you have a hidden unit like Kennen or Pike, you can grab Rasa in the hidden unit, and then it still becomes 2 power to get a larger volume of might for holds. So I think that lends itself to that a bit more. Double Switcher is largely there for the E matchup. Double Gust in the main is higher tempo, more low to the ground aggro. I like it. And then 2 up from the deep main. I'm still back and forth on having up from the deep in the main. There's like some matchups I love this card, and then a lot of matchups I'm like, eh. Granted, if you're going second and your opponent misses a turn 1 play, you play this, you're pretty much guaranteed to double conquer on your next turn and most likely hold to 3 or 4. So it can high roll for sure. It can make Hold the Weak useless for sure. You can flow it to help increase the reliability of using your legend ability. Sure, but space. I lack space. There's so many things I want to include in my deck that it's difficult to justify allocating 2 for up from the deep. Let's move on, shall we? 5th place, Mosik. I met Mosik. Mosik had an interesting choice. He paired into Koko Lopez, who was 11-0, and I think Mosik was 10-0-1 at the time. Same matchup that I paired, or same record when I paired into Prismaticism in round 12, and he chose to ID with him. He had to play 1 Like either way, he would be playing round 12 or 13. So when he paired, he thought it made the most sense to ID then and then do the win in next round as a attempt to improve his breakers or guarantee getting second seed, because he would be 1102 or 1101 1101 yeah 1102 if he ID'd and then won. So I presume he ended up second seed or something like that. But his deck, it's also a mirror. He probably didn't want to play mirror and had a chance to play something else next, potentially. And if I'm Koko Lopez at 11-0, I'm IDing round 12 every time and then getting a guaranteed ID, guaranteed first seed for top cut. Like, Koko Lopez has an incentive to do so. It is questionable if it made the most sense for him, but maybe he was just less confident in the mirror, didn't want to play Koko, or there's a myriad of reasons why he could have chosen to ID in round 12, but it's just kind of interesting to me. This build, I can tell immediately I don't like, because I love Treasure Hunter. I'm addicted to Treasure Hunter. He has a Gust Mug. Gust Mug is interesting in the mirror, for sure, because you can banish your opponent's Rasas if they're playing shovels, I suppose. Two Tide Turner as a method of moving the Baron around. And we have Double Fizz, Triple some standard stuff. Again, One-Tailed Cloak Matriarch. I don't understand it. It's not for me. But they might have some conclusions that I have not arrived at, or they might have certain opinions about the card that I just don't understand yet. So if you're a Tailed Cloak Matriarch enjoyer, especially outside of Tornado Warrior, enlighten me, please. Because I understand it a bit more if you're playing Tornado Warrior, but without it, I'm kind of lost. We are playing the Baron package. We're playing some strong. Sorry, this is all just kind of standard. Double Gust main, one switcheroo. So maybe, I don't know, and a Rebuke. I do like the Rebuke. I think it's good into the Yi matchup. Double Starcross. I kind of like this build a bit more than Koko's. The big problem is not having Treasure Hunter. Ooh, Forbidden Waste as a Metacult against Yi. You're a little slower, though, because you don't have... I suppose you're not playing Treasure Hunter, so you care a little bit less about the Ride the Wind shenanigans. I kind of like Forbidden Waste, and I might need to put some reps on it to see how much it improves the Yi matchup. Because I can see a world where you play this. I think it makes some sense. I think some of the Ottawa players had this in their deck. So I understand where they're coming from. I just don't know if the Veiled Temple and Sandswept Tome slot is the one that is the replacement here, because you're probably playing Forbidden Waste going second, which means you're playing Minefield going first or Blind. So I'm a bit skeptical. I don't know that I really like Minefield that much. I didn't play it this weekend, and I don't suspect I will be playing it in Singapore if I decide to take Kennen. Let's move on to the sixth deck from the event, Kyle the Prismaticism. Is it the same deck? Did you change anything, Kyle? I don't know if Darius was there. Was Darius there? It's kind of funny because, like, this is stock Rengar, which is interesting because you made it stock from Ottawa. One pack of Cub, one Pike as a split. Alan, ZQ, and I both think that this should probably just be a second Pike, but he probably has his reasons. His justification that I was aware of is it is a less expensive way to get the same, or to get a little bit less might. So it's, you hide it for 1 power and you play it, it's 3. Pike is 2 power for 4. So sometimes you do want the extra might. Sometimes you don't need it. Impact Cup is just fine, right? I think it's better consistency to have both, but also your opponent might... Like, I don't think it... There's no advantage here to your opponent not knowing if it's one or the other. Because, like, they calculate 3 or 4. Granted, this is rather 4 and 5 because of the Rengar ability. Triple Kaisa, Triple Hopeful. Efficient units that are just good. Especially, like, I want to play a lot of small units to take advantage of the... Legend ability, Starspring, and the Bunny is a disgusting combo. All of this makes sense. It's just kind of stock, pretty standard. If you're playing Rengar, you probably want to be as close to this as possible. I don't know that I would change much. I would maybe consider Triple Rampage in the deck, but what do you slot out? And we don't have sideboard, but I can't imagine it's that different from the Ottawa list. In 7, Shabbot Shalom on Master Yi. I wonder if there's another place we can find it. Is it on this site? I'm also assuming that these are correct. I don't actually know. There's no way to know, but we'll assume Rengar Master Yi. I believe this. I'm assuming this is Shabbot Shalom's list. 9-5 split. Pretty standard battlefields. I did see some Grove of the Godwillow in my games this weekend. What have we got? Triple punch first, double sabo, double on guard, triple defy, triple charm, triple discipline. The one of onslaught. Yep, it's a stock key list. Hold up. He's running Stella. I don't think Vector's on Stella. So what did he take out of the deck? The Lonely Polar Card. He's not on Steel Paws either. So not being on Steel Paws is strange. Not being on, or being on Stella is strange. But he had to have taken something else out because he's also not on 9 2-drops. If you miss 2-drop on Yi, it feels really bad because of the advantage of the legend ability. It effectively becomes going second, and going second on Yi is not what you want with one less rune especially. So it's not like you can just Rengar surprise. I don't know what's different. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Stellacorn and no Steel Paws is the most different thing about this list. I think most Masteries are playing some pretty standard things. Oh, they're not getting Osala, but we don't need it because we have one here. Hisoka. Standard. Stella again. No Steel Paws. So maybe it's just Factor, Kachao, Eclipse team members that are believers in Steel Paws. I was very concerned that Steel Paws was going to get popular, and I've tried running Lacerate in my sideboard because of it. Steel Paws is very potent in the right sense, but you kind of don't want to see more than one of them because you'll never empower them both. If you see them both turn 1 and you like turn 1 going first, play 2 Steel Paws, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Double Conquer. They both of them being 0 feels a little bad though, so I can understand people not wanting to play it. But this deck list is like the same. It's the same deck list. Is this actually Shabbot Shalom's? Or maybe this website is also just missing Shabbot Shalom's. So they played, or they showed, Stellacorn is so uncommon that I bet this is Hisoka's lists, not the best of list. Okay, that's what I'm going to go with for now. This is also, interestingly enough, another regional qualifier where a 11-1-1 missed. And that's kind of an attribute of there being so many players at this event. More people will end up at the same scoreline at the top. 2 Treasure Hunter, 2 Shadow Order Disciple is a weird ratio. I would choose one, make them a 3 of, personally. Double Gust, Double Switch, no Baron. This is a lot closer to my list. Every Kennen that we've looked at so far was double up from the deep. I guess I have to try it. I'm not convinced. Double up from the deep main doesn't seem that good, but I could be wrong. These players had a better showing than I did. Granted, I don't. We could spend time looking at what they paired into, but I think that is what will close it for this video. Upcoming, we'll talk about the experience I had at Barcelona. Was it really as bad as people said it was? I'm also going to talk about the scandal that caused a hour-long interim post-clock. Like, we waited an hour overtime for the next round to hit. Prismat was talking with me and Rossum about it. They were like talking about, okay, like if it's under an hour, you tweet about it. If it's more than an hour, I'll tweet about it type stuff. And it was like, what is happening? An hour overtime. But yeah, it kind of makes sense if you know the story. If you're looking for any sleeves, link in the description for my favorite brand at the moment, Element Sleeves. 10% off any pack you buy, and you can support the channel. I'm excited that I will be able to participate in Singapore and thereafter in Los Angeles. I'm uncertain what decks I'll be bringing, but I'm excited to play nonetheless. For all of you there that have watched this far, thank you for your support, as watching the entire video is great for the growth of the channel. And last but certainly not least, stay frosty, be the salt of the earth.